My sister and I graduated from medical school at the same time. But while our parents paid off all of her student loans, they didn't cover a cent of mine. She just deserves it more, sweetheart, my mom said, without even glancing up from the gourmet cupcakes she was carefully stacking on a tiered display stand for the party. Rachel's always been more focused on her studies. You've always had other priorities. The way she dismissed me so casually hit harder than a slap. I stood there in their kitchen, gripping my freshly framed medical school diploma, struggling to absorb what I had just heard. But Mom, I said, my voice calm even though my hands had started to tremble. We both graduated with honors. Our GPAs were identical. She let out a sigh and finally met my eyes with that familiar, disappointed look. Rachel doesn't have someone like Dr. Grant mentoring her. You've had opportunities she never got, she said. I almost laughed out loud. Dr. Sylvia Grant wasn't some handout. I earned my spot in her lab by working brutal 80-hour weeks, while Rachel spent her weekends skiing in Aspen with our parents. If anything, my so-called advantage had been sheer exhaustion. Meanwhile, my twin sister had endless emotional and financial support handed to her. So, I'm being penalized for building my own network? I asked, trying not to let the pain creep into my voice. That's when Dad walked in and draped an arm over Mom's shoulders. No one's punishing you, Claire, he said. We're just trying to be practical. Your sister needs more help. You've always been resourceful. Resourceful. That was the word they always clung to whenever they chose to ignore me. It explained why they never showed up for any of my undergrad research presentations, but never missed a single one of Rachel's volleyball tournaments. Resourceful was the reason Rachel got a brand new car for her 20th birthday, while I got a gas station gift card. Tomorrow was the big party, Rachel's debt-free celebration. Naturally, it was our parents' idea. They'd invited everyone, extended family, her close friends, even a few professors from med school. The invitation read, "Celebrating Rachel's achievement," as if graduating without debt had been some personal feat of hers, and not just the result of our parents footing the bill. I need to go, I said at last, slinging my bag over my shoulder. Early shift at the hospital tomorrow. Will you still come to Rachel's party? Mom asked, a hint of concern finally slipping into her voice. Not concern for me, of course. Concern that my absence might cast a shadow on Rachel's big moment. I'll be there, I promised, even though the thought turned my stomach. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Grant. Need to speak with you urgently about the Patterson Fellowship. Big news. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. A cold truth started to settle in my gut. My parents' favoritism wasn't just unfair anymore. It was about to turn into a very public embarrassment, and I couldn't stop what was coming. Rachel and I had always walked strangely separate paths, even though we were born just 6 minutes apart. According to family stories, I arrived first, quiet, calm, always watching. Rachel came second, screaming with healthy lungs, demanding attention. Maybe that's how our dynamic was set in stone from the start. Growing up in Cleveland, Rachel was the social butterfly. She made friends easily, crushed it in every sport she tried. I was the quiet one, buried in books, spending afternoons in the library, devouring everything from astronomy to zoology. Our parents never missed her soccer games or dance recitals. My science fair wins earned me a quick, "Good job, Claire," and a distracted pat on the head. By high school, the pattern was unmistakable. When we both shared our plans to become doctors, our parents were ecstatic for Rachel. For me, it was all worry and hesitation. They sat me down and questioned whether I could really handle the pressure. Medical school isn't just about brains, Claire, Dad had told me. It takes determination and grit. Rachel's always had more drive. The irony was brutal. At Ohio State, I maintained a flawless GPA while working part-time just to stay afloat. Rachel struggled through organic chemistry and physics. She needed pricey tutors, which our parents happily paid for. When she had to retake the MCAT, they covered an elite prep course without blinking. When I scored in the 98th percentile on my first try, they barely looked up from the dinner table. "That's nice, dear," they said. Despite everything, I never blamed Rachel. She was my sister, my twin, and I genuinely loved her. It wasn't her fault our parents played favorites. She just happened to be on the winning side of it. Sometimes I even suspected she felt uneasy about how obviously they favored her, though she never came right out and said so. We both got accepted into the same medical school in Michigan. For 4 years, we were side by side, studying late into the night, helping each other through the relentless rotations, and cheering each other on after every exam and milestone. I really thought that maybe, just maybe, our parents would finally see us as equals. But instead, they simply found new ways to spotlight Rachel's achievements while brushing mine aside. When I was chosen to present my research at a prestigious national conference, Rachel just happened to receive a community service award that same weekend. Take a wild guess which event our parents showed up for. But everything shifted during our final year, when Dr. Sylvia Grant, a legendary neurosurgeon, took a deep interest in my research on pediatric traumatic brain injuries. Under her guidance, I began to truly thrive. For the first time, I had someone who not only believed in me, but pushed me forward, because of who I was, not in spite of it. You have a natural instinct for research, Claire, Dr. Grant told me once. You spot patterns others completely miss. That kind of insight, she said, couldn't be taught. I often wish my parents could see me the way she did. The morning of Rachel's celebration, I met Dr. Grant in her office. She was an elegant woman in her early 60s, with sharp blue eyes and sleek silver hair. Her office was lined with awards, framed journal covers, and photos with some of the biggest names in medicine. Take a seat, Claire, she said, motioning to the chair across from her. I've got remarkable news. My pulse quickened. For weeks, I'd been anxiously waiting for an answer on the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, the most prestigious neurosurgical research position in the country. Only one graduating med student would be awarded the spot. The selection committee has made its decision, Dr. Grant said, her face unreadable. I held my breath. They chose you, she said finally, her face lighting up in a rare, wide smile. Congratulations, Doctor. Claire Bennett. You're going to Baltimore. The flood of emotions was overwhelming. Shock, joy, relief, and finally the affirmation I'd craved for so long. The Patterson Fellowship, the holy grail for anyone in neuro research. And it was mine. I don't even know what to say, I stammered. You earned this, she said firmly. Your work on neurovascular regeneration following traumatic injury broke new ground. The committee was especially impressed with how you blended surgical techniques with pharmaceutical strategies. The fellowship came with a generous stipend, housing assistance, and, most importantly, complete loan forgiveness. I was going to be debt-free too, but unlike Rachel, I'd earned it on my own. There's more, Dr. Grant added, her eyes glinting with something unreadable. Your parents invited me to tonight's party, likely just extending a courtesy to faculty. They don't know the full extent of our mentorship. I'd like to announce the fellowship there, if that's okay with you. My stomach twisted. I don't know, I admitted. It's Rachel's night, and if I make an announcement, my parents might think I'm trying to overshadow her. Dr. Fleming's expression sharpened. Claire, I've been watching how your family interacts for the last 2 years. I've seen the dynamic up close, at events, in conversations, in passing comments. I get your hesitation, but sometimes a win only counts if it's acknowledged in public. She had a point. If my parents heard about the fellowship behind closed doors, they'd likely dismiss it or chalk it up to luck. I nodded slowly. Okay, you can share the news. As I stepped out of her office, my phone buzzed. It was Rachel. Mom is going totally overboard for tonight. It's honestly kind of embarrassing. Wish she'd made this big a deal when we both graduated. You coming? I stared at the message, stunned. It was the first time Rachel had ever hinted at our parents' bias. Before I could even gather a reply, another text popped up, this time from Mom. Don't forget, business casual tonight, and please let your sister have her moment. It's very important to her. The contrast between the two messages hit me hard. Maybe I'd been wrong about Rachel, and maybe tonight would uncover truths our family had been avoiding for 26 years. Rachel's celebration was set at a high-end restaurant in downtown Detroit. My parents had gone all out, renting the entire rooftop terrace. No doubt it cost a fortune. As I stepped out of the elevator, I was greeted by a massive banner that read, "Congratulations, Doctor." Rachel. No mention whatsoever that there were now two Dr. Bennett in the family. I smoothed the wrinkles from my navy blue dress and took a long, steady breath. This was her event, whether or not Dr. Grant planned to make an announcement. I wouldn't let old wounds poison my relationship with my twin. Rachel spotted me almost instantly and broke away from a circle of family members to greet me. She looked incredible in a silver cocktail dress. Her blonde hair, identical to mine in color, was cut into a stylish bob. I kept mine long, sleek, and simple. "Thank God you're here," she whispered. "Aunt Diane's asked me 5 times if I have a boyfriend yet." Despite my nerves, I laughed. "What did you tell her?" "That I'm married to medicine. But if she knows any available neurosurgeons, I'm definitely open to applications." Rachel slipped her arm through mine, grinning. "Seriously, though, this is insane," Rachel muttered. "Mom invited half the med school. Dean Ramirez is even here." I scanned the rooftop, and sure enough, there was the dean, deep in conversation with our dad. "Wow," I said under my breath. "They really went all out." "Too all out," Rachel replied, lowering her voice. "It's actually kind of mortifying." Then quietly she added, "And why just for me? We both graduated. We both killed ourselves to get here." Something in me softened. Maybe Rachel had noticed more than I gave her credit for. Before I could respond, our mom appeared, a glass of champagne in hand and her tone brisk. "Rachel, the Hendersons just got here. Remember Michael Langford? He's chief of surgery at Cleveland Memorial. You should go say hello." She looped her arm through Rachel's and started guiding her across the terrace, practically pulling her away from me, then glanced back. "Claire, could you check with the caterers about the gluten-free options? Beth is being fussy about her diet again." And just like that, I was demoted to event staff, while Rachel was whisked off to network with hospital VIPs. Some things that never change. I was mid-conversation with the waitstaff when Dr. Grant arrived, looking effortlessly commanding in a crimson pantsuit that stood out in the crowd. "Claire," she greeted me warmly, giving me a quick embrace. "Are you ready for our announcement?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "The timing feels complicated." Her eyes scanned the scene. The oversized banner with only Rachel's name, the meticulously frosted cake, the slideshow where I appeared only in the background, barely more than a footnote. "I see," she murmured, "more complicated than I anticipated." Across the terrace, I watched as my parents introduced Rachel to Dr. Linda Park, chief neurosurgeon at Detroit Medical Center. Rachel and I had both applied there for residency. My stomach tightened. Were they trying to tilt the scales in her favor? "Dr. Fleming!" my father's voice boomed. He was headed our way, Mom and Rachel in tow. "We're honored you could join us." He extended a hand. "I understand you've done some work with Claire." Dr. Fleming tilted her head slightly, one brow arched. "Some work?" She smiled, but there was steel beneath it. "Actually, Claire has been my lead research partner for 2 years. Her work was vital to the success of our traumatic brain injury study." I saw my parents exchange a quick look, one I couldn't quite decode. "How nice," my mother said vaguely. "Rachel has also been involved in neurosurgical research. In fact, Dr. Park was just saying how impressed she is with Rachel's application." My face burned. That wasn't true. Rachel wasn't in neurosurgical research. Her focus was neuropsychiatry, a completely different discipline. And here my parents were, rewriting her resume right in front of me, potentially at my expense. Dr. Fleming's smile didn't waver, but her tone sharpened slightly. "Really? I was under the impression Rachel's work centered on psychiatric models, not surgical interventions." A silence fell over our little group like a heavy curtain. In that moment, I felt the trap closing. The hope that tonight might bring fairness was suffocating. Dinner began shortly after. Rachel sat at the head table with our parents, grandparents, and Dr. Park. I was placed at a side table with distant relatives and acquaintances, close enough to hear, far enough to be excluded. I picked at my food, appetite long gone, while my father spoke proudly to Dr. Park. "Rachel's always been destined for greatness. Even as a little girl, she was the one with drive, the ambitious one." Each word was a cut, clean, and deliberate. Across the room, Dr. Grant met my eyes now and then, with looks of encouragement, but I was barely holding it together. After dessert, my father stood and tapped his glass. Thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate our daughter Rachel's outstanding achievement. As you know, medical school is a grueling journey, and to come out of it with a degree and no debt is extraordinary. The room offered polite applause. Rachel looked uncomfortable, eyes flicking toward me. Mom stood next to Dad, smiling proudly. We always believed in investing in Rachel's future, she said, and tonight proves it was the right decision. Tears threatened at the corners of my eyes. The message was as sharp as it was clear. They invested in her. Suddenly, Rachel stood up. I'd like to say something, she announced, voice clear. She turned to face me, her expression full of something I hadn't seen before. Remorse. This celebration doesn't feel complete, she said. Claire and I graduated with the same GPA. We both worked incredibly hard. Actually, Claire worked harder because she did it without the support system I had. A hush spread through the crowd. My parents stared at her in disbelief. Rachel, Mom hissed under her breath, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, Rachel replied. I can't keep accepting recognition that excludes my sister. It's not fair. It never has been. My throat tightened. After all this time, she was finally saying it. Publicly, clearly, and without shame. My father tried to recover with a forced laugh. Of course we're proud of both our daughters. Claire's done well too. But tonight is about celebrating Rachel's debt-free status, which is an outcome you paid for, Rachel interrupted. It wasn't an achievement. It was favoritism. The room went silent again, and then Dr. Grant stood, her voice cutting cleanly through the tension. If I may, she said, this seems like the perfect time to share some news about Claire. My parents looked panicked. Claire's groundbreaking research on neurovascular regeneration has earned her the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Grant announced. A ripple moved through the crowd, gasps, murmurs, eyes turning toward me. For those unfamiliar, she continued, this is the most prestigious fellowship available to any graduating medical student in the country. It includes complete loan forgiveness and a generous stipend. I could see Dr. Park sitting up straighter, visibly impressed. My cousins were whispering and pointing. In fact, Dr. Grant added, the committee highlighted Claire's dual method approach as uniquely innovative. She developed this while managing full-time clinical rotations. I've worked with many exceptional young doctors, but few show the brilliance and drive that Claire consistently brings. Applause erupted, genuine and loud. People were looking at me, smiling, nodding, clapping with real admiration. My parents sat frozen, faces unreadable but pale. Rachel was beaming at me. Dr. Fleming raised her voice once more. One more thing. I've personally arranged for the rest of Claire's medical school loans to be covered through our department's merit fund, a unanimous decision by the board in recognition of her extraordinary work. I was debt-free, and I'd earned every inch of it. After that, the entire energy of the party shifted. Professors and clinicians who had only paid attention to Rachel earlier were now flocking to me, asking questions about my research, offering congratulations. Supervisors I barely knew had noticed my patient care and shared heartfelt compliments. Meanwhile, my parents sat quietly at their table, stunned. Their carefully curated family narrative was unraveling in front of an audience. The overlooked twin, the quiet one, was suddenly in the spotlight. Rachel found me again, holding a glass of champagne. Congrats, sis, she said, clinking her glass against mine. The Patterson Fellowship, that's insane. Why didn't you tell me? I only found out this morning, I admitted, and I didn't want to take anything away from your big night. She frowned. This whole circus was Mom and Dad's idea, not mine. I tried to tell them it wasn't right to make it all about me. But once they lock into something... You really said that? I asked, surprised. Rachel nodded, eyes clouded. Of course I did. Claire, I've known for a long time that things weren't fair. I just didn't know how to speak up without making it worse. Before I could reply, Dr. Linda Park approached. Dr. Bennett, she said, looking at me, I was very impressed with Dr. Grant's summary of your work. We should talk soon. Perhaps about bringing your research to Detroit Medical instead of Hopkins. I blinked, stunned. The doors I thought would never open were now swinging wide. That's incredibly kind of you, Doctor. Park, I said, still a little stunned. She's already accepted the Patterson, Rachel cut in, proudly slipping her arm around my shoulders. It's a once-in-a-lifetime offer. Then she added with a teasing smile, but you should know, my sister never stops at just one revolutionary breakthrough. I'd wager she'll be leading another cutting-edge study before she's even unpacked in Baltimore. Dr. Park chuckled. Well then, when your fellowship is complete, do keep Detroit in mind. We'd be lucky to have you. She glanced at both of us. You in neurosurgery, Rachel in neuropsychiatry. Two talents in your own right. As she walked away, I turned to Rachel, still reeling. You didn't have to say that, I told her quietly. I know you were hoping to stay in Detroit. I still might, she said, but not by letting Mom and Dad twist things behind the scenes, and definitely not by taking opportunities that should be yours. That's not the kind of doctor or sister I want to be. Across the terrace, I saw our parents finally getting up from the head table. They moved hesitantly, their path slowed by guests who now wanted to talk about me, a surreal twist that clearly unsettled them. Here they come, Rachel murmured. Ready? Not really, I admitted, forcing a smile. When they reached us, my father cleared his throat. Dr. Fleming had some very impressive things to say about you, he said in a tone meant to sound proud but laced with confusion. The Patterson Fellowship, that's quite the distinction, my mother added, her voice clipped. Why didn't you tell us you were even in the running for something that prestigious? I looked at her calmly. Would it have made a difference, I asked. You've always made it pretty clear where your attention and your investment go. They exchanged a tense glance. That's not fair, my father said. We supported you both, my mother interjected quickly. Just differently. Rachel stepped in before I could reply. Mom, Dad, not tonight. But we are going to talk about all of this. Really talk. No more brushing it aside. She shot me a meaningful look. No more pretending. Just then, Dr. Grant appeared at my side, saving me from having to respond. Excuse me, Claire, she said. The dean would like a word. Something about featuring your fellowship in the alumni magazine. She turned to my parents with a polite but pointed smile. You must be incredibly proud of both your daughters, she said, though I imagine Claire's recognition must be especially rewarding, given all she's had to overcome. The word overcome was delivered gently, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. My parents had the decency to look ashamed. Well, my mother said, struggling to find her footing, we always knew Claire was special. Too little, too late. The week after the party, everything changed. News of my fellowship spread across the Detroit medical community like wildfire. Suddenly, doors that had always been shut creaked open. Professors who had once ignored me were now reaching out with congratulations. Peers who'd barely acknowledged me throughout med school were now eager to call me a friend. Meanwhile, my parents went into full image repair mode. The very next day, they showed up at my apartment with shopping bags and strained smiles. We've been thinking, my father said, placing a small box on the table. With both of you launching your careers, we thought it was time for a special gift. Inside the box was a rose gold watch, an exact match to the one they'd given Rachel for her birthday 6 months earlier. It's beautiful, I said flatly, not reaching for it, but a little late. My mother flinched at the words. Claire, we know you felt overlooked sometimes, but everything we did because we believed you were strong enough to handle things. Rachel needed more help. I kept my tone even. That's a convenient story, but it doesn't explain why you never came to any of my presentations, or why you paid for her MCAT prep course but told me to use free YouTube videos, or why she got her living expenses covered while I was told to take out extra loans. We only had so much money, my father said, almost defensively. We had to make decisions. Yes, and time after time, you chose Rachel. My mother's eyes welled up. We love you both the same, she insisted. Maybe, and I replied, but your actions never did. I turned away as my phone rang. It was Dr. Grant. Hi, I answered quickly. Yes, I'm ready to talk about the housing options. Actually, your timing is perfect. 3 weeks later, I stood in the middle of my empty apartment, final boxes stacked and labeled for the moving van. Rachel sat on the windowsill, watching me tape up the last box of books. I still can't believe you're leaving next week, she said softly. Detroit won't be the same without you. You'll be too busy saving lives to notice I'm gone. I teased, though part of me felt the ache of goodbye. We had spent so many years moving in tandem, but now our paths were finally splitting. I was heading to Johns Hopkins. She was staying in Detroit. I keep thinking about Mom and Dad, Rachel said suddenly. Everything they did, or didn't do. She exhaled. For so long, I thought I was the lucky one. But I wasn't. They made me dependent on their approval, and it kept me small. I joined her at the window and sat beside her. You didn't do anything wrong, Jess. I didn't do enough right either, she said. I should have stood up for you a long time ago. She looked down. They're falling apart, you know. Mom keeps crying. Dad's going around telling everyone about his brilliant daughter at Hopkins, like he personally funded your career. I let out a small laugh, surprised at how little it bothered me. Let them. Their approval isn't my currency anymore. And it was true. The longing for validation from people who never really saw me had faded. Dr. Fleming had shown me what real support looked like. The kind that challenges you, believes in you, and never asks you to shrink. So, Rachel said, what now? For us, I reached over and took her hand. Now we move forward, I said, without the rivalry they created between us. Rachel smiled, squeezing my hand. Dr. Claire Bennett, Patterson Fellow, I'm so proud of you. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I truly believed it. I was at peace. The road ahead would be hard, but it was mine, and I was ready.